welcome to the Labor Force Podcast. Stories of the working class in a time of renewed labor militancy and awareness that capitalism is a rotten deal. I'm your host, Mike Strugan, proud member of New York State United Teachers. In this week's episode, the Starbucks strike escalates. Nurses in Iowa and New York fight to unionize, their one answer to things like staffing and safety. And Florida city workers rebuild their union in the wake of union-busting SB 256, the law which dissolved their previous one with its draconian certification requirements. Then we extend the affordability issue with a vexing question of how China, yes, China, has managed to eliminate extreme poverty, but we have not. You can probably guess the answer on that one. And we close with a look at how a national labor party could break the duopoly and win over red states with true economic populism. All coming up on the Labor Force Podcast. All right, what's been brewing, pun intended, at Starbucks lately? So as of this week, we're talking 105 cities and over 3,000 baristas as of Thursday on strike. Once again, their main ask, concessions at the bargaining table, especially since negotiations are still less than amicable. Now Starbucks is out there claiming less than 1% of their stores are impacted. When the baristas ask customers to cross, or actually not cross, the picket line, you can't help but feel the tension. And it's not just numbers, it's about people. Starbucks Workers United is at the center here. And if you followed any of this, you probably heard from Michelle Eisen. She'd been with the company for 15 years and left in May, but she's now the lead spokesperson for the union. She said she wakes up every day still shocked at how hard the company's fighting them. I mean, after everything these workers have shown, it feels bizarre they're still being forced to prove, quote, we're not going anywhere. Eisen said the unionized workers are the ones really saying, what are you doing to this company? Like the feeling in the cafes has changed. Customers aren't coming in for the experience anymore because of the way things are run. And it all seems to come back to invest in the workers if you want things to turn around. Workers are just done. They're pushing for this to be the longest and biggest strike in company history if Starbucks doesn't change its tune. And let's talk about that settlement out of New York City. Starbucks has to cough up $35 million to more than 15,000 employees for all kinds of scheduling abuses, like last-minute changes and chopped hours, plus civil penalties on top, so almost $40 million all told. You figure that's $50 a week per worker over a few years. The city's Fair Work Week law says you shouldn't have your hours yanked around without notice, and this finally just might enforce it. Obviously, these unpredictable hours mess with everything. Rent, second jobs, even just getting enough sleep. It's not just about the paycheck, it's about some sense of stability. And I always think, what's it going to take to actually sustain a strike like this, across so many cities and with all the pressure Starbucks is pushing back with? It's endurance. And it's a sense that, if this drags on, you better believe these baristas are in it for a real fight. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani and Bernie joined workers on the picket line in Brooklyn Monday. And no doubt, they summed it up plainly.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here at a picket with Starbucks workers like the ones on my right and the ones on my left. Workers who are braving the December cold and the much deeper chill of unfair labor practices in this city and across this country, and the fear that has come with that of union busting while they demand the better working conditions that they deserve. Like so many working people across this city, these are not demands of greed. These are demands for decency. These are workers who are simply being asked to be treated with the respect that they deserve. They're being asked that their labor be repaid in a manner that allows them to build a dignified life. And I joined them because I want to do everything that I can to show my solidarity, but also because I know that far too often the voices of everyday working people are not amplified with the volume that management so easily receives. So I want to share a few numbers with you here this afternoon, numbers that I hope will place this struggle into some sense of perspective. $36.2 billion. That is the amount of money that Starbucks made in revenue just last year. $95.8 million. That's the compensation package that Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol earned for 4 months of work last year. $6,666. That is how much times larger Niccol's pay was than the average Starbucks barista's salary. 400. That is how many labor law violations the NLRB has found that Starbucks has committed. 120. That's the amount of stores that are on strike, and 85, the number of cities that they are taking place in. Now, what these numbers show us are a two-pronged picture. On one side, corporate greed and self-enrichment at the cost of its own workers, and on the other, remarkable solidarity by those workers who have been exploited and mistreated time and time again. Solidarity, as much as we speak of it, we have to remember, is not an abstract concept. It is measured in picket lines, stood on in the rain and in the sleet. It is measured in rent payments that workers do not know if they will be able to meet. Childcare bills they do not know whether they will be able to afford. And it is measured in strangers who have never met one another, linking arms to fight for a shared goal and a fairer future. Because how else could we describe being on a picket line with Starbucks workers, alongside workers of 32BJ, alongside workers from HTC, alongside workers from WGA, alongside workers from every single sector across this city, because we understand that no matter our trade, we are workers at the end of the day. And I am proud to be here today, and proud that senior members of my transition team and administration have joined Starbucks picket lines in the days and weeks prior. And I am proud to stand here alongside incredible elected officials at the city level, at the state level, and also to my left, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Because all of us are united in the belief that we must build a New York where every worker can live a life of decency. We must build a New York where our words do not ring hollow as we say that this is a union town. And we must build a New York where the workers who power it are able to afford to live in it. Thank you so much. And now, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, it is an honor for my wife and me to be here with you, to stand with striking Starbucks workers who are telling this company they are sick and tired of corporate greed and sick and tired of union busting.
That's right.
And what the mayor-elect just pointed out is that what is happening here on this picket line is happening all over this country. We are living in an economy where the people on top have never, ever had it so good. You got one man owning more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. And while the CEOs make unbelievable salaries, 60% of our people in Vermont, in New York City, all over this country are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to pay the rent, struggling to pay for health care, struggling to put food on the table. And what Zoran and I are dedicated to is creating a nation and an economy which works for all of us, not just the 1%. So I just want to thank the Starbucks workers for their courage here and around this country. We are going to prevail. Thank you very much.
Let's shift gears to healthcare, where the temperature is just as high. Out in Des Moines, UnityPoint health nurses, about 2,000 of them across 4 campuses, they're gearing up for a union vote, hoping to join Teamsters Local 90. This isn't just about squeezing out a small raise either. Patient-staff ratios and safer working conditions are the central focus. We're talking about folks who made it through the frontline chaos of the pandemic and now still have to fight to make their workplaces bearable. I caught a couple of stories that brought it home. Alex Willman, a critical care nurse, said straight up, "We're fed up with UnityPoint whittling away at what nurses need at the bedside." And he's not just talking about wages. It's the stress, the danger, being one nurse short in the ICU, that kind of thing. Sammy Ladd, another nurse, shared how on-the-job violence is unfortunately not rare. I mean, she's been attacked. She's seen coworkers get attacked by patients. It's brutal, and she believes, really believes, this fight is about dignity and safety as much as anything. Management, of course, is spending big to keep out the union. Teamsters say to the tune of $6 million. They want an investigation into how UnityPoint is spending that cash. I think everyone suspects that money could do a whole lot more for staffing or supplies if they weren't blowing it on union busting. Teamsters Local 90 has brought out the big guns, mentioning a $400 million national strike fund. You get that question all the time. How do strike funds and union support actually change things in healthcare? Well, if you know you've got that kind of backing, workers aren't as likely to cave the minute things get tough. It's a security blanket, a pretty thick one. And it's not lost on anyone that all this comes, 2 months late because of the federal shutdown. These nurses have waited enough. If a company like UnityPoint can fork out millions to break a union drive, it sure says something about where their priorities are. And honestly, about the grit these nurses have to keep going. So I wouldn't be shocked if come Tuesday, we're counting 2,000 new Teamsters in Des Moines. And that's not all. Closer to home here in New York State, over 350 registered nurses at Cayuga Medical Center have formed Cayuga United CWA and are seeking voluntary recognition so they can begin bargaining for a first union contract focusing on safe staffing, citing deteriorating conditions and unsustainable patient loads since the pandemic. The effort, supported by CWA Local 1111, follows nearly a decade of attempted union drives linked to understaffing and frustration with management. Nurses say unionizing will strengthen their ability to protect patients, with RN Heather Bretz noting that, quote, evidence clearly shows smaller nurse-to-patient ratios mean better patient outcomes, and that unions give nurses, quote, a stronger voice when it comes to protecting my patients. That's it in a nutshell. What other mechanism accomplishes that in the workplace for the employees? Never mind the bosses. From Iowa to New York, the answer is the same. Union yes is the way. The recent merger of Cayuga Health and Arnott Health into Centralis Health, intended to address rising costs, staffing shortages, and expand specialized care, has further motivated nurses like educator Jackie Thompson, who said she wants a union to ensure resources for excellent patient care, to amplify our voices, and to safeguard the hospital's mission amid fears of a potential buyout. CWA District 1 Vice President Dennis Traynor urged management to recognize the nurses' supermajority, stating, when we invest in our nurses, we are investing in the health of this community. Now let's take it down to Florida, Titusville to be specific. This story doesn't get the same headlines, but it's just as important. City workers, utilities, and public works folks are rebuilding their union after their last one basically got nuked earlier this year, thanks to Florida's SB 256 law passed in 2023. Basically, any public sector union now has to prove that 60% of eligible workers are paying dues. And get this, they've got to redo that every year. If the membership drops, no union. It's a gauntlet. So these employers are organizing under IBEW Local 606, and they've already got a strong start. At least 91 out of the 141 workers have signed on. What stands out to me? These folks don't just want a club, they want a voice again. A way to bargain for pay, benefits, protections like just cause, so you don't get fired on a whim, and grievance processes that actually give you recourse. They had those things under LIUNA Local 630, but thanks to the new law, all that's at risk until this union gets certified again. For some perspective, after Janus, different issue but same union-busting spirit from the Supreme Court, in my own union here in New York State, we were scrambling to track down every single member to sign recommitment cards. I think we did all right. Got to 100% in most locals. The difference is, once we did it, we were in the clear for a while. For these Titusville workers, they got to do that every single year. It's exhausting. It's calculated to burn people out. But here they are, still pushing forward. City officials, big surprise, deny there's retaliation or that things have actually deteriorated. But for these workers, the goal is clear. Get a new contract, bring back those protections, and make sure the city, or the state for that matter, can't just keep moving the goalposts. It's a fight for every scrap of security and dignity they can win on the job. So that's the roundup for today. Starbucks baristas, nurses, Florida city workers, all on different front lines, but all wrestling with these big questions of power, support, and what it really means to have a say at work. Let's get into a simple but uncomfortable question. Why does the richest nation on earth still have so many people living in poverty, while a country like China, an authoritarian state everyone loves to hate, has managed to pretty much eliminate extreme poverty since the 90s? This was raised in The Guardian recently, and of course it's interesting to say the least. This is wild. In 1990, China had something like 943 million people. That's over 80% of their population getting by on less than $3 a day. Nearly 1 billion people dirt poor. And by 2019, zero. Yeah, zero. Meanwhile, you look at the U.S., which on paper is crushing it, leading the world in productivity, innovation, all those buzzwords, and well, the number of folks living under that same $3 a day threshold is actually higher now than it was 35 years ago. Over 4 million people if you're counting. And it's not just cold numbers. That disconnect, it gets at the heart of what we're talking about. Our economy keeps getting bigger, keeps getting more productive, but somehow millions get left behind, while in China, almost everyone got lifted up out of actual grinding poverty. And you know, I get it. People will say, well, the systems are different. And they're right. China's got a heavy hand, and they planned everything. But on the other hand, we in the U.S. like to brag about how our system is all about freedom, prosperity, all that. So why do we keep letting so many slip through the cracks decade after decade? Here's where the numbers just start getting kind of brutal. Back in 1980, Americans at the bottom of the income ladder, let's say the poorest 10%, got a bigger slice of the pie. Their share has been shrinking ever since. Today, it's about 1.8% of national income. For a second, let that sink in. 1.8%. That's about the same as poor Bolivians, and actually less than poor folks in Nigeria or China. I always have to double check that because it sounds made up, but yep, Nigerians statistically get a bigger chunk. And during the same time, people at the top have seen their incomes absolutely fucking skyrocket. The richest 10% in America, they're pulling further and further away from everyone else. Just since 2000, the top's income grew more than twice as fast as that bottom 10%. Every year, the gap gets wider, not smaller. The explanations for this? Machine learning, market forces, globalization. Sure, all that stuff helped, but that doesn't explain why we made policy choices that basically guaranteed the rich keep getting richer. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill? Supposed to make America great. What it actually did was cut health coverage for millions and raise healthcare costs for all but the richest Americans. Same with those tariffs, meant to punish China, but really they just made groceries and staples more expensive. The richest folks, they didn't notice. But for working people, prices went up, paychecks stayed the same or even shrank. And the data shows household income for the bottom 10% down 7%. But if you're in the top fifth, you made out just fine. And I don't want to pretend this is just about one guy or one party. This isn't a Trump or a Biden thing, or even a Clinton thing, except maybe for a few years when Bill and, weirdly, Trump during the COVID checks put some money in working people's pockets. Other than that, Republican or Democrat is the same story. The rich win. Policy after policy, decade after decade. So what does all that mean for actual people, right? It comes down to choices. What our leaders decide to fund and what they decide to cut. Cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, health subsidies. These are political decisions made over decades, and every time they take away a little more from people barely scraping by. I mean, the last time either party really put the poor first was during COVID when they had no choice. Otherwise, efficiency or market solutions always come first, and workers get left with the scraps. But here's the part that really gets me. Why is it that an undemocratic system like China's can wipe out extreme poverty while the oldest, richest democracy on earth chooses not to? I'm not sitting here applauding Chinese-style repression, trust me, and their politics are a whole other can of worms. But if they can pull off getting everyone above an abject poverty line, what's stopping us? You gotta wonder, maybe this. America's lopsided inequality isn't some kind of accident. Maybe it's by design. I'll let you chew on that. We're going to keep pulling at this thread in future episodes, because if we don't talk about how these decisions get made, nothing changes, right? Speaking of power and decisions, raise your hand for a Labor Party in the United States. According to Labor reporter Hamilton Nolan, it's how to win red states, those that support Trump with that bull in the china shop mentality, because their lives have been upended by harsh capitalism that has hollowed them out. But this is a real angle. Remember that many Trump voters admitted, when asked who their second choice was, that it was Bernie, because the economic message sticks. So I feel like I've spent way too much brain power on debating, complaining, honestly just griping about what the Democratic Party should or shouldn't do. I'm sure a lot of you know that pain. The thing is, this whole debate inside the labor movement about forming our own party, a real labor party, it's been going on for decades. But let's get real for a second about why that's felt almost impossible at the national level. The main barrier? The U.S. has a winner-take-all electoral system. It's like if you want to build a third party, all you really do is end up draining votes from the party that's closest to your side, which basically hands the win to the side most opposed to everything the labor movement stands for. And it's not like this is some mystery. Just look at other democracies, places with proportional representation, right? Over there, you can build out real third parties because if you win, say, 10% of the votes, you get 10% of the seats. No spoiler effect. But here, a third party has got to trudge uphill, and even when it does well, it just splits the left, and the right walks away with it. If you really want to see a Labor Party run a presidential campaign where the goal isn't just playing spoiler, you first got to have a plan for winning proportional representation. And yeah, until that happens, the most effective move nationally is what we've been doing. Pushing the Democrats left, making them squirm a little. But, and there's a big but here, that's not the whole story. You don't have to play by those national rules everywhere. If you zoom in, look at state and local races, especially in places where Democrats might as well be invisible, suddenly there's room to try this whole Labor Party thing. And that's really the focus. What would happen if working-class candidates with a real labor backbone started showing up on those ballots in deep red states? Not as Democrats, because in a lot of these places, having a D next to your name is political suicide, but as true independents with an actual worker-first message. So before we dig into whether it could work, let's look at where it's already sort of happening. We have to know that theory is one thing, but what does this look like in practice? One campaign that makes people's heads turn, of course, is Zohran Mamdani's run in New York. No, not Nebraska, not Alabama, but still. The thing about Zohran's campaign was the insane level of organizing. They had more than 1% of the city's total citizens volunteering. You could walk down the street, and it would feel like every third person you met was knocking on a door for this guy. Over 100,000 volunteers. In any campaign, that's like running a small army. His team beat big money not because they outspent the establishment, but because they out-organized them. It was people-powered from the ground up. And the lesson there, it isn't that you need 1% volunteering everywhere. Even 0.5% in a smaller state could be a total game changer. Now let's go to where you least expect, Nebraska. Dan Osborne, a former union leader, ran as an independent and almost knocked off a Republican in a state that's about as red as it gets. He wasn't running as a Democrat. He didn't have to wear that baggage. His campaign was built around working class issues. He got 47% of the vote, which, let's be real, is wild for an independent in Nebraska. Dan's identity as a union guy was central to how he connected with voters out there. And he's not done, by the way. He's at it again, going up against another big-name Republican next cycle. And then Missouri. Here's an example that, honestly, gets overlooked way too much. There, you've got big union energy on the ground, showing up in ballot initiatives. Stuff like protecting union rights, getting rid of dark money, bumping up the minimum wage. These things win at the ballot box, and yet the state legislature, which most people pretty much despise, just ignores it. Missouri isn't won by Democrats, but union identity runs deep there. Imagine if, instead of that party baggage, you had candidates running explicitly on economic populism, on supporting unions, but without the D next to their names. Think about it. Maybe that's a recipe that can actually work in deep red states. So now let's get all nerdy with some numbers, because this is the part that really made me stop and go, wait a second. Why isn't this already happening everywhere? Look at every single deep red state. Wyoming, West Virginia, Alabama. These are places where Trump pulled like 60 to 70% of the vote or more. Union density is low, but the absolute number of union members is actually huge compared to what it takes to build a winning campaign. In Wyoming, you need around 3,000 volunteers to hit that magic 0.5% of the whole population for a campaign. They've got 14,000 union members. Alabama, same thing. It'd take about 26,000 campaign volunteers, and there's 140,000 union members. You see where this is going? Folks always argue, yeah, well, unions are weak in these states, and a lot of those members vote Republican anyway, so what's the point? But the thing is, these people have never been given a genuine pro-worker independent option. It's always Democrat versus Republican, and if you can't stand the Dems, who do you vote for? But picture a campaign where the pitch is clear as day. I'm a worker, I'm a union member, and I'm going to fight for universal health care, living wages, better jobs, and tax the rich and useless bosses. That's not a culture war wedge, that's about people's real lives. And honestly, it's a message both parties are afraid of in these states. Again, that was Bernie's appeal, and it's largely what put Mamdani over the top, class politics. It's already being put to work here in New York with my union, New York State United Teachers. We're a blue state in our urban centers, but very red and conservative upstate, such as my region here 30 miles from Canada. After November's elections, the union announced, according to initial analysis of the November 4th, 2025 general election results, at least 31 NYSET members have been elected or re-elected to public office. These wins reflect the power of community-driven leadership and the commitment of educators, school staff, and public service professionals who understand firsthand the needs of students, families, and schools. Quote, "This is what happens when working people lead," said NYSET President Melinda Person. NYSET members are proving that public service and community leadership go hand in hand, and that our shared values of fairness, opportunity, and respect belong at every level of government. NYSET member candidates won because their neighbors trust educators to lead. NYSET members are deeply rooted in their communities, they listen, they serve, and they show up. That's what voters responded to, real people with real solutions. These victories are part of NYSET's Pipeline Project, an initiative to recruit, train, and support educators in running for public office. These candidates are active community members, parents, and neighbors who understand the challenges working families face, and they're stepping up to make real change. These wins show the power of educators leading with purpose. NYSUT will continue building a movement that puts students, families, and working people first, in every classroom, every community, and every elected office. So, of course, that's the state level. What if the national labor movement actually put some muscle, and by muscle I mean money and staff, into building a machine for these working class campaigns? Imagine the AFL-CIO organizing not just strikes, but electoral infrastructure, training candidates, recruiting from within, writing platforms that come straight from union priorities. Instead of always begging the Democrats for scraps, unions could run candidates who don't have to take orders from any party bigwig and definitely don't have to defend a party brand everyone in their state hates. Combine that with help from DSA or the Bernie wing, and just a fraction of the checked-out voters who haven't seen anyone fight for their issues since forever. That's not a pipe dream, that's a blueprint. Red states aren't lost causes. They're just places waiting for someone to actually try a new approach and put the working class first. What a concept, right? So when you zoom out and look at Starbucks baristas holding the line across over 100 cities, nurses in Iowa and New York demanding the bare minimum of safe staffing, and Florida city workers clawing their union back from the jaws of a rigged system, the message is crystal clear. The people doing the work in this country are done waiting for someone else to save them. They're organizing, they're fighting, and they're refusing to apologize for wanting a life with dignity. Meanwhile, our political class keeps tinkering around the edges, telling us this is the best we can do, while China, of all places, eliminates extreme poverty and proves what's possible when a government actually decides to act. We could do it too, we choose not to. And that choice, made again and again by the people in charge, is why unions matter, why class politics matters, and why working people have to build their own power inside the workplace and beyond it. And maybe that's the real through line of this episode. Whether it's at the bargaining table, on a picket line, or on a ballot in a so-called unwinnable red state, workers keep showing that when they move together, they can shake the ground under anybody's feet, bosses, billionaires, and political parties included. Well, that does it for this episode. If you like what you hear, give a rate or review on your favorite podcast app to help me grow. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with over 200 labor shows you can check out at laborradionetwork.org. This has been the Labor Force Podcast. I'm Mike Strukin. Solidarity, always.